So I have a friend Wesley who I've known since 5th grade, and we were friends throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school, and we got up to all sorts of shenanigans in that time. But after we graduated high school, we kind of drifted apart because he went to Texas A&M and I went to UT Dallas, and we kind of stopped talking to each other in that time. Like literally the only correspondence we had for 2 years after graduation was when I randomly saw his family in a car next to me, and I'm like, wait, hold up, I think I've seen that kid somewhere. Is that Wesley's brother? I did like a triple take because the last time I had seen his brothers, they were like legit jits, like they were tiny. And just seeing them grown up, I'm like, wait, no way these dudes are in high school right now. And I texted Wesley like, bro, I think I just saw your brothers, like this is like crazy. We got a kick out of it, but it was one of those relationships where you just naturally drift apart as you get older, which is unfortunate because I considered him to be a really good friend of mine, but you know, life happens. But then this last summer, we finally reconnected after 2 years while meeting up with some of our other friends, and I instantly remembered why this dude is so peak. For context, he has a black cat that he named Lucky. You know how like black cats, the superstition is their bad luck, but he just got a black cat and then he named it Lucky, which is already kind of funny and ironic. But then he said it's named Lucky with an I, like after the rapper, because one thing you gotta know about Wesley is that he has peak music taste. Like in high school, he was the first one to ever put me onto J. Paul. And he also put me onto Pierre Bourne's original music, which is actually so good and underrated. I would strongly recommend if you're into rap. But after we caught up this past summer, we started texting more, and he started to put me onto a whole new genre of music, which is like blowing my mind. I'm talking about underground UK rap. First off, Fake Mink, you might have heard of him. Second off, Fang. Third, Jim Legacy. Fourth, Quest E. And then we met up during Halloween weekend and he showed me Bridge Kids, which is like this fever dream cartoon. And then he showed me the one ship challenge in the hood and Homeless Pop the Balloon. And like this is why you gotta have friends with peak media taste. One of the most underrated friends you will ever have is the dude who will hit you up on a random Tuesday night and say, bro, you gotta check out this musical artist, you gotta check out this cartoon, and it'll be the most insane thing you've ever seen that you would have never found by yourself. And if you are this type of friend, I have no clue where you find these things, but you're a guy who knows ball and your taste is impeccable. Another type of underrated friend that my high school self like literally couldn't live without is all of my friends who gave me rides back in the day, because I didn't have my driver's license until my first semester of college. So before that, at literally every social gathering, every school event, like anything, I would hit up my friends like, yo bro, you think you can give me a lift? Because you don't want your parents to drop you off to a high school social gathering. Like, no. I still remember one of my first memories, my junior year of high school, was when my friend Jay picked me up from my house and we were on the way to one of our school's football games, and I listened to Family Ties for the first time. And I remember I was really anticipating Kendrick's comeback, and you know, this was before he went Dax mode, but I still vividly remember that feeling of being in that car during that sunny evening, and it just felt perfect. And then our school got blown out by Allen, but you know, you win some, you lose some. But if you're a high schooler and you live in like a suburban sprawled out area, I would strongly recommend that you get your license sooner rather than later, because I kept pushing that off, and before I got my license, I didn't realize that driving is actually not that hard once you get the hang of it. So I definitely would have gotten my license earlier had I known that. But you know, a lot of great times are had when you pack 8 of your friends into a 5-seater car because he's the only one with a whip. The next type of underrated friend is just the guy you can go full TISM mode with. with. I feel like a lot of modern day friendships and relationships in general are just completely performative. Like, people are so afraid of showing any sort of flaw or saying anything that could potentially be original or controversial or go against the grain that most people just regress into the mean behavior of how they think they're supposed to act. Modern day friendships are literally just a bell curve chart of behavior, which is why most modern day friendships are really lame and boring. But every once in a while, you'll find someone who matches your frequency. They're in that top percentile that you're able to be yourself without any sort of fear whenever you're around them. Like, there's a particular goon that I know that I frequently hang out with, and every time I talk to him, there's some sort of thought-provoking conversation going on. Like, I'll go over to his house and we'll play some UFC, and I'll beat him like 90% of the time, but while we're playing, we'll have an extremely thought-provoking, intense conversation about the existence of free will, followed by an equally intense, thought-provoking conversation about which letter is most useless. It's definitely Q, by the way. Speaking of Q, you remember that game QWOP from back in the day? That has nothing to do with this video. I just randomly remembered that game. That game sucked. The last type of underrated friend is one that's very hard to find, but I would strongly recommend that you go and seek out because they are extremely helpful, and it is the Unk that gives you wisdom. For me, my older brother and his friends were instrumental in shaping how I viewed the world, not even necessarily by what they told me, but just by me being around them and seeing how they acted. I was able to soak up useful information. For example, one of my older brother's friends graduated UT Dallas with a finance degree, and she went to one of the top investment banks in the country to work. Now, talking to her was extremely important for me because I was an incoming freshman studying finance, and she had just graduated at the top of her class and was going to a very respected job. So I wanted to get more context on how she was able to excel in college and eventually land a high tier position and how she was doing at her new job. But the more I talked to her, the more I realized that she actually didn't like her job too much. She said she was working extremely long 14-hour days, doing a lot of mundane work. She didn't have time for anything else in her life, and she didn't really feel fulfilled with her work. And after I talked to her for a couple times and really gained context for her story, I realized that she had reached the pinnacle of the path that I was going down, but it didn't really seem enticing to me. Like, I'm fine with working long hours, I'm fine with sacrificing a lot of things to focus on my goals, but only if it's my goals. And I didn't really feel like the path that she had gone down aligned with my goals. So I really thought about it for a while, and I think talking to her gave me a lot of context on how I want to move forward with my life. And I think that's why it's really important to try to gain friends that are older than you, preferably like a couple years older than you, because they're still in your peer group, so their advice is still relatable and relevant to you, but they're still a couple years older than you, so they have that experience that you can learn from. These were underrated types of friends in my life. Let me know any types that I left off the list in the comments.